Welcome. In a series of short explorations, we try to get an impression of the dynamics in the field of pilgrimages in Europe. And the label of our project is Reinventing Pilgrimage in Europe. And today our guest is Emeritus Professor Helmut Eberhart. Professor Eberhart studied Volkskunde und Ethnology, and he is Emeritus Professor at the Institute for Cultural Anthropology and European Ethnology in Graz, Austria. And he's an expert in the field of popular religious culture. And he did for a long time research on pilgrimage in the German-speaking countries, but also into changes in the rural spaces. And important is to note that he is not only interested in changes and dynamics of the cultural ritual phenomena like pilgrimages, but also in the dynamics of the interpretations and the research of those phenomena. Today, we will focus on pilgrimage dynamics in the German-speaking countries. And of course, that can be only a very limited overview and exploration. And what I want to do is to try to connect the exploration to the work, the research of Professor Eberhart. And as a way of ordering the material, I propose to make a distinction between, on the one hand, the many traditional, national, local, and regional places of pilgrimages and pilgrim routes, and on the other hand, the new ones, the new invented or revitalized paths, like the Ecumenische Pilgerweg, but also the many invented or discovered or reconstructed Camino routes. Let us start with those national, traditional, regional, local pilgrimages. In my pilgrimage book collection, I have just for Tirol a 4-volume series of Wallfahrtswege in Tirol, Pilgerwanderungen in Tirol. So especially in the east, I think, and the southern parts of German-speaking parts, every region has its pilgrimages, has its sacred sites. And I wonder, what is the position and the role in current culture? Can we trace perhaps new appropriations of these traditional Roman Catholic places like Mariazell or the Vierbergenlauf?
Well, this is an important question, and it's not so easy to answer, but on the other side, it is easy because we had a lot of appropriations, that's clear. You name Mariazell and also the Vierbergenlauf. Mariazell, of course, is quite another thing because the Vierbergenlauf, Mariazell is a pilgrimage center, Vierbergenlauf is not. Vierbergenlauf means this is an annual event that leads people, the pilgrimages over 4 hills, let me say, over 4 smaller mountains. But anyway, it takes you about 17 hours to do this walk. And it goes about 50 kilometers. So it's really a very, very long distance for one day. Let us come to Mariazell. Mariazell, as you know, is one of the holy shrines of Europe. That means it is one of the most important pilgrimage centers in Europe. And a lot of changes happened to Mariazell during the last decades. I start my research in Mariazell in the middle of the 1990s. And I did questionnaires. I gave questionnaires to the people at that time who were visiting Mariazell. And it was interesting because I was asking for their main motives to go to Mariazell or to drive to Mariazell by car or motorcycle or anything else. And I was really surprised because there was nothing about historical reasons that we know from historical research on pilgrimage. For example, to pray for health or to thank God for health or you have an accident or something like that, you know. The main motives were to be in a community. This was the first. And the second was So the yearning for community and the yearning for spirituality. These two motives were the main motives for going to Mariazell or any by walking or what else. But at that time, we had a really different ways to go on a pilgrimage tour. They ride on horses. They use motorcycles, buses. They walk, of course, and inline skater and all this you can use to come to Mariazell. So you can see a very, very big difference at that time in comparison to the centuries before. Though we see, hoppla, a lot of things have changed. And nowadays, you show me some books on Austrian pilgrimage tours, and if you go to in a book shop today, you have a whole wall for for guidebooks, for pilgrimage tours, of course, especially for Santiago and so on. This shows you the big difference. When I start with my research on pilgrimage, I did research on historical pilgrimage in the 18th and in the 19th century. And if you go in a bookshop at that time, I mean in the 70s, there was almost no special guidebook for a pilgrimage tour or something like that. But you can see on this example the big change. But on the other hand, in the year around 2000, it was I think 2001 to 2003, I was a big project. I did a big project with some colleagues, and this project was funded by the Austrian Research Fund. And we sent out questionnaires to about 350 Styrian parishes. And we got answers from about 250, though it's really a good percentage. And only 13 parishes of these 250, exactly it was 254, only 13 parishes, they answer that they have no pilgrim activity. That was really a big surprise. But and the next step of the answer was when your pilgrimage tours were invented. And this was a big surprise, the next big surprise. Then I can read it here. 75% of all this pilgrimage were younger than 30 years in the year 2000. That means after 1970, they were invented. Another 17% were invented between 1900 and 1969. And from the 75, around 17% were invented between 1970 and 1979. 25% were invented between 1980 and 1989. And 31% were invented between 1990 and 2000. So you can see how this invention increased especially during the years between 1970 and 2000. And I'm sure if we repeat this, we would repeat this questionnaire now, we would have much more activities than in the year 2000. Yeah. So you can see that it is really a lot of activities on these pilgrimage tours.
And have you an idea what could be the context of this emerging of pilgrimage spots? So in the Netherlands, we see that it has to do perhaps with the walking culture, with the hiking, the trails that people want to walk. Is that also the case in German-speaking countries, do you think?
Partly. I think well, let me come back to the Vierbergelauf, because this is one event you have to walk 17 hours. It is so sportive, you know. And in the 1970s, when Helge Gerndt, he wrote the
Yes.
important book on Vierbergelauf, and when he did his research, the sportive element was really on top. Maybe I can't remember exactly, but it was very high in the ranking, you know. And nowadays, if you ask the people with a questionnaire, the sportive element in all walking pilgrimage tours, it's not on the top. As I said before, on the top is the yearning of spirituality and the yearning of a community. Because these kind of communities, they are close together because they have the same idea, they have the same interest, not always the same attitude. Because this is also, I just go to other questions in your, because this, it's really interesting that the people, they have different attitudes. Some of them, they are really religious. Still they are. But the most of them are not. We have esoterics of all kind of esoteric groups. We have agnostics. They go on a pilgrimage tour. And not only for sportive reasons, they go for some kind of looking for yourself, you know, to find yourself, to find your identity, to be quiet for some days, to can make a step beside, just out of all your troubles and of everyday life and so on, you know, because this is the problem. What I have in my argued in my theoretical basis, that I think it is some kind of compensation of the lack of different things we need, you know. And for that reason, it is possible also for agnostics to go Mariazell, as it is possible for all esoteric groups, especially esoteric groups. They don't see the church as a church. They see the church as a place of power. What we in German we call it Kraftort. So this is one thing, and they think always in that way that churches, especially in medieval times, they always were built on a so-called Kraftort, on a so-called place of power. You know, so and those they want to see, they want to go there, not for religious reason, but of course we have on the other side, we have this kind of pilgrims. They go for religious reason also. They are maybe sometimes in the same group with other people, you know, but they have another attitude. They have another main reason for going there. That's really an interesting thing. But there is another point. You can make a difference when you see a traditional pilgrim group and when you see a modern, let me say, a modern pilgrim group hiking to a pilgrimage center. You know, the traditional pilgrim group, they always go in procession when their path is paved, you know, or they walk down, or just not do climbing, not do how do you say it in English, for steil, but you know what I mean. If it goes like that, They
yes.
can't pray, you know, that's clear, because they must breathe.
Yes.
But on the other way, they go in procession and they pray. They always pray. I accompanied such a pilgrim group for some decades, and it was really fascinating because they pray almost the whole day. You know, I did not do it, but I have to be quiet. So I have the same feeling, maybe as they have, because psychologists declare this repetition of the prayer as a phenomenon to become quiet. And that's really it. That's it. But I come back to the difference between the two pilgrimage groups. You know, so the one group, the traditional group, goes in within a procession, in front the cross, and then in a certain order the people follow. The other group, you cannot make a difference. You cannot distinguish them from a hiking group.
A walking group.
You know,
yes.
it's impossible. They don't pray. They don't. Maybe sometimes they stop when they pass a cross on the way. You know, sometimes they stop, but not always. They just walk. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we have to take into account to when we watch these people, though they are really very, very different. But even the traditional groups, not all people have the same attitude. That's absolutely clear. Sometimes also in traditional groups, they go for traditional reasons, because I don't like that my pilgrimage tour stopped after 300 years or something like that. So I want to go because I want to keep the tradition. The others, they go for her health. They go for the health of the group and all these things what we know from traditional pilgrimage. You know.
So community is an important element, spirituality is an important element, but perhaps also the past, the tradition, you mentioned it already. So the Vierbergenlauf was famous because people were saying that it's a cultural element of the past, of the Celtic past, of the pre-Christian past. We see that in Ireland, we see that in Scotland, we see that in Scandinavia. Is that also an element, an important element in the Vierbergenlauf or in other pilgervaarten, in other pilgrimages?
Yes, I think so, but it is not so often maybe as you think now, because it is let me say, Vierbergenlauf, of course, this is a tradition, and it is for the identity of a certain group of people, but only for a certain group of people doing this every year, you know. But of course, you have also a very big group, but nowadays there are about 2,000 people going, accompanying the Vierbergenlauf. So, of course, not all of these people are interested in tradition. But on the other side, this Vierbergenlauf, it works since about 1500. So you can say this is really a long tradition of more than 500 years. But you can see, if you have a look at internet and you have a look at Vierbergenlauf, you see some websites with Celtic ideas. It's for me, I don't know, should I love about or should I be angry about, you know, because you can do whatever you want to do. You can't kick them out. This idea, you cannot kick this idea out of the internet. And this is for certain groups, it is important for their identity. But I would not say that especially the Celtic identity is important for all people. And I'm sure that the core groups, the traditional core groups, the farmers and so on, they are not so interested in the Celtic idea because they do what they do since decades. That's it. The Celtic idea in the 19th century, there were historians, one of them was Wutte, they fixed the Vierbergelauf in the medieval time, in the late medieval period. And then came for me, it was always a catastrophe, and it was typically around 1900, a bit year, I don't think it's about 1905 or something like that. Georg Graber published a book, and he was the first saying this is a Celtic custom, a Celtic pilgrimage tour, and some people, of course, in Carinthia, they listened to this and they were very happy about Georg Graber's idea of a Celtic, because of course, if you can imagine that 2000 years, and in the 1970s, a journalist published a book, thousands of, the English title, I translated spontaneously, thousands of years are walking with us. Jahrtausende gehen mit uns. And this was a very, very popular book.
Yeah. And then came Helge Gernt.
Helge Gernt did a serious research, and his book is wonderful.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we have many emerging pilgrim paths the last decennia in all of the German-speaking countries, Austria, Switzerland, and also Germany.
Yes.
I'm interested in two elements, in two dimensions. On the one hand, the role of tourism, and on the other hand, the appropriation of this interesting new paths by the church. First, the tourism is, you've published a lot on the relation pilgrimage and tourism, and some titles are pilgrimage is a challenge for tourism, and tourism is a challenge for pilgrimage. What is the relation between tourism and pilgrimage, in your opinion?
Well, I think we can focus one idea. Tourism conquers the pilgrimage centers and the pilgrimage tour. That's it. Pilgrimage became more and more important for tourism in the last decades. Let me give you an example. Some years ago, I was engaged in a research project led by the Diocese of Graz. And this project was interesting because they want to construct new pilgrimage path to Mariazell through Styria, from Croatia, Slovenia, and on the other side from Hungary. And I was involved in the Styrian part of this new constructed pilgrim path. And they gave us the way, they said, okay, we want to do this way, and it is your task to find along this way churches and crosses and all these things, and to describe it, Okay, this was our task, and we did it. And then they said to us, well, our pilgrimage ways, our pilgrimage tours, we pass a lot of communities from the two different border points of Styria up to Mariazell. One way was a traditional way. This way passes Graz, and then it goes up to Mariazell on the traditional route. But the other way was completely new. And of course, if you combine these two ways, a lot of Styrian communities were touched by these ways. But the other communities were not touched. They asked the diocese, please, why this new path don't pass our community? So that it's not nothing to say more, you know. This the only interest was a touristic interest, because they know that the pilgrims spend some money in this community. Sometimes they stay overnight there and so on, you know. This was the only interest. But on the other side, especially in Mariazell, happened one really interesting thing. There was a big conflict between the responsible priest in Mariazell, the superior, and the community, because the hotels and all inns and restaurants and so on, they were interested to get a lot of people, and they should stay in Mariazell, of course. And the priest were absolutely not interested in this. So there were always the conflict, because he was only interested in people with a religious attitude. You know, this of course leads to conflicts.
Yeah, yeah.
But
there you have the tension between the church, the religious motivation, and the tourist economic perspective.
yes,
Yes.
and tourism is really important now for religious aspects and for all pilgrimage aspects. You know, that's absolutely clear.
Yeah.
We have, you know, we have a lot of new, you know it, and you wrote it in your paper, sent it to me, that we have a lot of new paths. And of course, hinter all these pilgrimage ways or paths, there is a touristic interest behind. As you know, in Styria, the touristic center in Graz, they gave orders outside for constructing new ways and so on, you know. And I'm sure within the next years we will also have a spider net. We have it already, but we have a more or less really more and more a spider net covering the whole province, you know.
Okay, I have still many questions and many themes, but due to the time, we need to close this interview. But perhaps there is one thing, an aspect that we did not address and that is for you important to mention.
Well, there is one thing we should always think on it, the so-called petition books. When we do research in pilgrimage, petition books are really one of the most important sources. I did a lot of research in it, and also some of my students. And I start with research in it on historical, on Baroque books and so on, you know. And I saw that we can learn a lot about the importance of a pilgrimage center, because the people write, or in former time the priests write down in these books where does the people come from, for what reason, and so on. Nowadays, the people write, of course, by themselves why they come and what they want, and from where does they come and so on. So it is still important to make research on the motives of the people coming to a certain pilgrimage center. This is really interesting, and you can also see from where does they come from.
Yeah, it's also interesting to use modern media like the social media. It's also
of course. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. So, many thanks for having you here in our series. It was very interesting, and I said it already in my introduction. It's very limited, of course, in 20 minutes or more to talk about the whole German-speaking part of Europe. But again, many thanks.
Thank you for inviting me, and have a good time. And I wish you all the best for your project.